when the artist works in a crisis. So do you think that affects their artwork, and is it in a good way?
Telling your own story, you can't be cliche, boring, or wrong. If it's your story, it's your story.
How does one find relevance in a normal person living in a normal society?
The art world now, after Trump just won the election, to let people from the LGBTQ community know that this is a safe space, know that people care about them.
Art makes you feel that you're not alone, that there's someone with you, even if you don't know the artist.
Most diverse spectrum of voices out there in the public space speaking, because it's a fast language.
Thought-provoking insights, sparking intellectual curiosity. Tune in, transcend the ordinary, and get nuanced.
I am an artist. A little bit about myself. I do confessional artwork, like abstract work. So I have a question. One thing people talk about a lot is, artwork on mental health. It goes out a lot now. So how do you think it's connected to politics right now? That's a fun question I wanted to ask you.
That's a great question. There's so many layers in that question. I guess I would go back to saying the relationship between mental health and politics, and mental health driving voting, and mental health, like mental health that drives your vote. There's mental health that drives whether or not, like the extent to which you're capable of interacting with issues outside of yourself to get to a place where you want to be engaged. So there's all different things like mental health and politics there, and then also the repercussions of political decisions, the mental health, crisis that we have after things like that happen. So there's that relationship there, and then how art can play a role in that, I would say, is before and after. Before and after that, like voting takes place. Before, I think art can be a really great way to educate, to promote issues, to get attention for different topics for people to have conversations around. Art is an amazing way for people with minority voices, whose voices aren't, the loudest, the most powerful, the richest, the whitest. Art is a way to have the most diverse spectrum of voices out there in the public space speaking, because it's a fast language. It's people see art, they don't have to read an essay, they see an image, and all of a sudden may understand the world through the eyes of somebody who has disabilities, or through the eyes of somebody who doesn't look like them. So I'd say that's before. After, it can be really helpful in terms of mental health, like coping strategies, and if things don't go your way, it can be a place to invest your energy privately in healthy ways. I'd say art can be a really great place to do that if politics don't go in your direction.
Yeah, well, in one of your classes, you mentioned that when there is a crisis, that's when the artists have to work.
Yes.
So do you think, there will be a lot of peak in emotions when the artist works in a crisis. So do you think that affects their artwork, and is it in a good way, or is it in a negative way? The emotions get projected in their artwork. Is it a good thing?
It can be all the things, because it's so context specific. Because even the same piece of art that goes out could be a very good thing for one person, and for the person standing arm in arm next to them, it could be a really bad thing. So it's specific to the time, the topic, the person receiving it, the time of day. In terms of people being able to express how they're reacting, express how they're feeling, I can't think of too many exceptions where that would be a bad thing. That feels like having tools to express the way you're reacting I can't think of reasons why that would be a bad thing. Yeah. It's also a way of building community. So I see the art world now, after Trump just won the election, just the quick imagery, it's only been days, and already the images showing people grieving, the images that are saying, we need to come together. We're still a point, we need to be strong for each other. Here are posters you can post to let people from the LGBTQ community know that this is a safe space, know that people care about them, know that they are going to be protected by people inside their community. Artists are doing that. I see it like all over social media is the fastest way for that to happen. So it's a long way of saying it's critical now that artists are working right now.
Does art need crisis or conflict to thrive?
No, I don't think it does.
So how does one find relevance in a normal person living in a normal society?
Normal person living in a normal society when there's no crisis relevant or no crisis in that person's particular reality at that moment still has so many applications. I mean, because it can connect you with a neighbor, for example. It can be something, if you feel like you're in a job that doesn't feel meaningful for you, then it can be something where it brings you meaning to make this artwork that is yours. If you're working in a job that you don't feel like any of it is yours, you're just doing it to make money.
But that's also crisis.
That's crisis.
In
I guess we're all
right?
in some type of crisis.
Correct.
We're all always
Yeah.
in some type of crisis.
So,
Yeah, it's I guess it's not something I see as a fixed thing. It's like a tool that can be used by anyone at any time for any reason. It's a form of communication and not a solid thing.
yeah. Why did I say this? Because recently I just listened to one artist who was being questioned on why does art exist. So he had an interesting perspective on that, where he says that it is only when something happens that we find somebody's poem very interesting, because we want to find relevance. We want to see if somebody has suffered this before. So
Yes.
that's where I was
Right.
inclining to.
Right.
Certainly we have a conflict in Gaza. Like right now, a lot of kids I see on internet, somebody rapping, somebody having a certain form of expression because maybe they find that is the only way they can express what they are going
Yes.
through.
Yes.
So I think, in my opinion, our art has always thrived in places where either it has been through complete authoritarian regimes, or maybe it has been through wars.
Yes.
So majority of the art where I see myself connected, because I am also from a place where there is a lot of history in terms of conflict.
Yep.
So what do you have to say on this matter?
I have very specific things to say on that matter, starting with Gaza. I have a very good friends and his family that I love very much. We started, I guess it's 13 months ago. We write almost every day. And in the beginning, we would, like, what are you going to write about? I'm basically writing to stay, are you still alive, is why I'm writing. He's saying, but I can't say that every time, but I can't say, oh, how are you doing over there? And I can't tell him about my life. I can't say, like, I tried this new restaurant and they're starving. So we had nothing to talk about because he didn't want to take his experience. He was too nervous to take the realities of what he was experiencing, which is like worse than I knew humankind was possibly capable of doing, and put that on my shoulders. And I couldn't put the luxury and safety of my life in front of him. And it was so hard, but we wanted to stay really close to it. And then we found art. And it's like, of course, what are we doing? So for, I'd say 13 months, we've spent most of it talking about art, which has been incredible. It started, my art students were having their senior exhibitions, and I would just start saying, oh, and Fatima is working on this, or, look at Dustin's show. I'll send pictures of Dustin's shows, and Zoe, look at Zoe, and then they got to know it so well on that side that then they were asking, like, how's Sienna doing? Is she nervous for her? But it was all of a sudden, art was this language that our experiences are that different, and we could speak openly about it. And then in one of the lectures I gave at Alliance just a couple days ago on art and politics, I showed Banksy's art, a British artist who does the public murals, has done them twice in Gaza during the two of the many last 2005, 2015, he was there trying to get attention, trying to get attention. I showed his murals from 2005, showed them from 2015, and then at the ends, I showed them from last week of the 5 kids, we communicate through drawings because now I don't speak Arabic and the lower 4 don't speak English. And so we draw back and forth, and they are carrying on Banksy's legacy as children. They're like 13 years and under by making these drawings of Palestinian women wearing the keffiyeh and holding the flag and saying, I love my country, Palestine exists. And I have photographs. I had to erase them from the picture because I can't say a child's name and I can't say the oppressor's name for fear of being murdered because of that. So absolutely, the type of art that resonates most with me is how in times of conflict and how in times of tragedy and urgent reparation, like urgency, art can sometimes take this really strong hold where words don't work. Like words don't work, spoken words aren't working, written words aren't working. People have heard them so many times, they're so used to that language. And art has a way of speaking to all the people and really making statements, and often making statements that like everyone's looking around and saying like, when are the police coming in? And no one arrives. And like artists have a way of getting through those cracks, you know, being kind of like the one that looks like the fool, but is the one that's telling the truth type. That's a long way to answer your question, but I do believe that there are like an infinite number of purposes for art. They don't always have to be in times of conflict or trauma. That happens to be the art that I'm particularly interested in, would be my response.
That brings me to another question.
Sure.
That is like again closely related to this. Does art bring any sort of change in societies?
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. I think to answer that, it's hard to quantify that. Like, what does art do? Why is art important? The best way I can do that is to take the flip side, and it's to imagine if there were no art, like imagine life without it. Take 1 week and you can't listen to music, you can't watch films, you can't read books, you can't look at art, you can't wear clothing that's any different from the person next to you, you can't drive a car that's any different, you can't dance, you can't see dance, you can't go to theater. If you took all art out of the world for just 1 week, I think that people would quickly see how necessary it is. You know, it's not believed to be necessary, especially in a capitalist society. But if you take it away, I think people would have trouble with that. So does it change? Yeah, I would say it forms society. It's why we want to be here.
There's this very beautiful quote, right, in Dead Poets Society, wherein they say that engineering, doctor, these are very noble professions. You do it for life, but art is for life. It is what sustains human. It is what makes them emotional, which is also what I wanted to ask you. I had 2 questions for you. One is, of course, on the terms of art as a therapy. You've talked about how, you know, art, it heals people, right? But like, as an artist, how it heals you, and as for also for the people that are watching it, because art makes you feel that you're not alone, that there's someone with you, even if you don't know the artist, not their story, not their history, but it makes you feel connected. So what are your views on art as a therapy in your life? Has any particular artwork of yours healed something that it never broke, in that sense?
Healed something inside of me. Yes, to art and therapy. It's a tool, it's a communication tool. And I found, I'm kind of answering the first part and then the second part. I found, at least when I'm teaching, and then probably also in myself, if I reflect hard and not long enough, I found that when students when they're going through a traumatic event and they're making artwork about that, the fact that they can get it out of them and have a record of it. So their struggle or their questions, it's not like you're just trying to forget it. You're not trying to get over it. You're taking this space and you're taking this time to like solidify it, make a record of it through some creative form. And then you can talk about it with other people, and maybe a way you wouldn't do like sitting on a couch saying, I'm going through this. You can say, this artwork is about this artwork is about that. And it's more comfortable to talk about yourself and other people to talk about you through this. And then it doesn't have, you don't have to like let go of it. It's here. Like you can keep it, but not maybe have it right inside of your body, carrying it in your head and in your body. Public, there.
I feel like as an artist, it really requires some sort of courage to be vulnerable, right? Because you are putting your story out there, and given the right now the kind of world that we are living in, right? We have lot of mediums to portray our voice, to say our voice, but then there's no one to hear, right? Like there's so much of judgment that goes and everything. So even as an artist, if I'm writing something, I'm a writer, right? So if I write anything that's very personal to me, I feel like I fear the publish button, but like I fear there's a certain sense of fear before hitting the publish button, because you need to be vulnerable in front of the world. So what do you think that vulnerability, how vulnerability comes into play here?
Yeah, I think that's everything. That's all of it, right? Because you're making something specifically for the purpose of it being different from things that people have said before. Like you're not trying to sell someone something on a billboard. You're saying something honest and true. And that is all about vulnerability. And a couple things. I might think like in terms of finding strength, thinking about who are your heroes and what did they have to do, and maybe what negative feedback did they get, anywhere from maybe it's just negative feedback to being imprisoned, to being, thinking of the different scale. But if think of your heroes, that might be someone to align with, like, okay, they got through this, I can get through this. I think, again, telling your own story, you can't be cliche, boring, or wrong. If it's your story, it's your story. People can disagree with it. People can have negative reaction.
You want people to disagree with it, and then you come up with different forms of art.
To compensate that.
Start making art back about that. They'll start doing this. You start doing that.
I will make my artist life figured out.
Correct.
And maybe being okay. Like it's totally fine if people don't like your writing or my art, or your like. We're all fluid, also. So the person who's writing that negative feedback on Tuesday might have a very different thought on Thursday. You might have planted a seed. 2 years from there, maybe they understand where you're coming from. So also being patient with the criticism.
So we as a class,
Yes.
we have something for you.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean? So how about something for me? Invite me here to this like utopia.
Yes, it's not anything fancy.
Okay.
But just
It's what? Look at this! It's so beautiful.
You
I
can
love it
open
so much.
inside also.
there's
something in
there's
there.
something in it.
inside of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That poem was formed by everybody in class. We sat together and wrote it for
Yeah,
you.
we wrote a group poem.
Yeah, for you.
Oh my gosh. A Graveyard of Dreams. That's so beautiful. So beautiful. Oh my gosh. A voice that survived.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is absolutely a treasure.
And
my
that
God.
drawing was inspired by your quilt idea. It was so colorful. So
It's so colorful.
yeah,
I love it. And I can't even imagine, like, that's one thing I was saying too with art. It takes so much time to write and to draw and to make music and to, like, there aren't a lot of places. Just taking that slowing down to be able to think of what you, this like encapsulates how much you've cared. I feel like this is like how much you care about me in each of those lines that you drew, because I know how long that takes. It is stunningly beautiful, and the message and the meaning. Thank you. Thank you so much.